The quote is this, quote, "Man's work begins with his job, his profession. Having a vocation is something of a miracle, like falling in love." End quote. That's from Hyman Rickover, the father of the nuclear Navy. I thought it was worthwhile since we are in a Navy town like San Diego. I'd also like to bring up in relation to this that last week the NBA staged a draft. And this wasn't a draft for players on the basketball court. This was not a draft for WNBA players. This was for video game players. The NBA is starting a new league called NBA 2K, in which your skill as a video game basketball player will rate you a salary that begins at $32,000 to $35,000 a year. This is nearly commensurate with salaries in the NBA. And I just bring this up because I want you to think about it. I want you to get into the mindset of what we're going to talk about today. Now, having said all that, I want to, of course, thank Ray Powers for inviting me to be as part of the advisory board, and Bob Doherty and everyone here who've done so much to make me feel so welcome. In giving this presentation, in knowing that it's possible or even likely that Steve Forbes is watching somewhere, I am living the story of my book that's coming out in May, The End of Work. Because it can't possibly be work what I'm doing right now and presenting these ideas about how work is evolving in such a way that more and more people get to pursue something that involves their passion. This book in many ways is my story, and it describes what I think is a beautiful future. And that's what's most exciting about presenting, is that I'm presenting to many students at Forbes Ashford University. In looking out at you and thinking about the people watching, I'm looking at and thinking about the most accomplished generation in the history of the most accomplished and richest nation in the world. What your generation is going to achieve in terms of advances that rapidly enhance our standard of living, that make life much better, will be staggering. What your generation is going to achieve in terms of advances that help those who formerly couldn't help themselves lead perfectly normal lives is going to be amazing. Be optimistic about the future, because it's going to be a great one. And the reason it's going to be a great one is that the work of the future is increasingly going to reflect what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. The work of the future is going to be more and more about things that elevate you. You will get up in the morning and go and do something about which you're very much an expert. And in doing that which elevates your expertise, you're going to be exponentially more productive. Productive people accomplish enormous amounts. The future is bright. Now, in thinking about this, again, it's important to get into a different mindset, because the nature of work is changing before our eyes. In Singapore right now, there are plastic surgeons, but they are not plastic surgeons for people. One of the most popular fishes there is something called the arowana fish. Don't ask me why, but plastic surgeons there make good money charging owners of these arowana fish for eye lifts and chin jobs, if you can believe that. The New England Patriots, when they traveled to Minneapolis for the Super Bowl, brought a massive team of assistants and people working for the Patriots to make them great. This included not one, but 3 sleep coaches. Can you think of something more pleasurable than sleeping, but so advanced are we economically that there are now football teams, because they want to prosper, have people who coach you on how to sleep. Now, what's interesting about that is if you watched any of the proceedings to the Super Bowl, what went on is there were all sorts of people there who earn a good living being NFL insiders. Imagine that. There are people today who are paid to follow one of the most popular sports leagues in the world and report on its doings to people. To everyone here, we are in the midst of something extraordinarily exciting that's taking place about work. It's a beautiful thing. Earlier today, Bob Doherty was talking about the thousands and thousands of job classifications that exist in the world today. Compare that to 150, 160 years ago. When you were born then, your life was kind of set. You were going to be in the farming business. That was your future. People were born and they made it their life's work to raise and create food. That's what everyone did. There weren't too many other options. There weren't too many other classifications. That's what you were going to do. And then something remarkable came along. Millions and millions and arguably billions of jobs were destroyed thanks to this advance. It was called the original robot. It was things like the backhoe and the tractor that suddenly made it possible for fewer and fewer people to create the food on farms. And in the process, again, millions and arguably billions of jobs were destroyed. The biggest job destroyer in history, but did it put people in breadlines? No, it freed people up to solve all sorts of other societal problems, to focus their energies on all sorts of different things. Now, talking to Olin earlier today, he actually likes fishing and agriculture. Olin, if I had to do that work, I would be an object of immense pity. I would be a joke. I would be lazy. People would make fun of me. And this speaks to the beauty of work's evolution. The fact that the tractor and the backhoe freed so many people from the work of farming meant that more and more people got to get out into the world and express a unique level of expertise. My book is all about this modern world that is thankfully very much unlike the world of 150, 160 years ago. We no longer have to worry about raising the food every day that we eat, and because we don't, we increasingly can be experts. And now for background on this, it's useful, at least to me, to travel back in time to explain to you a major reason that I wrote this book. I'm not a big music guy, but in 2014, some friends of my wife invited us to a Fleetwood Mac concert in Washington, D.C. And so we went on the assumption that they're getting old, they're probably soon to retire, and so the seats weren't very good, but that actually aided the outcome because we were toward the back of the arena, and we're watching, rather than them on the stage, which we couldn't really see very well, we're watching them on the video screens. And this fed this essential outcome in that we're watching Mick Fleetwood, who's easily in his 60s, just abuse his drum kit. You could not believe the joy in his eyes. And then you look at Lindsey Buckingham, someone who's worth staggering amounts of money, but working endlessly hard at the guitar and so happy, singing, playing the guitar. And the realization, for me at least, was that there's no fear that they're going to retire anytime soon. How could they possibly retire from doing something that they love so much? These people were working enormously hard. You have to get in shape to go on a tour like this, but it was evident from watching them that they were hardly working. And a slight digression from here is to say that this end of work that I describe, whereby more and more people do work that doesn't feel like it, is going to force a total redefinition of retirement. Because people talk about the retirement crisis, people don't have enough saved. Well, that's a natural market reaction to a world in which more and more people don't intend to retire. Why would the members of Fleetwood Mac retire when they're doing something they enjoy so much? Now, that's an outlier, I get it, but more and more people are doing something they enjoy, so this notion of stopping them at some point is going to be something that's largely erased from society, particularly from the younger generations. Now, Lindsey Buckingham plays the guitar and sings, but imagine if the only option in life was to be a successful investor. Well, odds are people wouldn't pay all this money to go watch Lindsey Buckingham talk about investing. But they do pay that to hear Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett famously auctions off usually at least one lunch a year in which people pay $3.5 million just to have lunch with one of the world's greatest investors. Now let's let Warren Buffett weigh into this discussion about how work is evolving. Several years ago, he wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, and he asked people to imagine if we lived in a sports-based economy. As he put it, in such a marketplace, I would be a flop. You could supply me with the world's best instruction, and I could endlessly strive to improve my skills, but alas, on the gridiron or basketball court, I could never even command a minimum wage. Well, thank goodness Warren Buffett isn't limited to one path in life. My guess is also that if he had been born 160 years ago, he probably would have been pretty average on the farm. But as the world evolves and the classification of work evolves, someone like him was able to pursue something at which he's absolutely confident that he wakes up every day dying to do it because it's a reflection of his unique skills and passion. Now, all this speaks to the amazing world in which we live today. I'm of the belief about this world that no one is stupid. I'm also of the belief that no one lacks work ethic, yet everyone in this room knows what it's like to feel lazy. Well, my argument is that there are no stupid people and there are no lazy people. What there are, however, are people who have very great skills that are suffocated by a small economy such that they're not able to express those skills in the marketplace. No one's lazy. Everyone in this room knows what it's like to be very good at something. Most of you know what it's like to be very good at a number of things. And you know that when you're doing what you're very good at, that it's no longer work. That you can spend hours and hours doing it, you can spend weekends doing it, and it doesn't bother you because you're doing something that reinforces your unique skills. And that's where we're heading today, is that we can increasingly combine these two things. And this is crucial, at least if you believe my thesis about where we're headed, because I don't think you can be happy if you don't work hard. I think people who are not working hard are generally miserable. Someone with lots of, Warren Buffett could write anyone in this room a big check such that they would never have to work again, but that would guaranteed not make you happy. Work is what makes us happy, and this isn't to say that we can't have a life free of leisure and happy nights out, but it is to say that the true source of happiness is blood, sweat, and tears. That unless you're doing something consistently on a daily basis, you just don't feel good about yourself. And everyone here, I think, also knows what it's like to be in a job in which you're doing something that you're just no good at. And you dread Sundays, and you dread showing up at work because it's not a reflection of your skills, and you try to work hard. Sometimes you do, but it's hard to do it consistently. Everyone knows what it's like to not put in a hard day or a hard working day. It's difficult. Work is the source of happiness, but it's my contention that you can't be a consistently hard worker unless you're doing something that elevates your unique skills. Now, to be clear, the end of work is not about how to learn how to work harder. Believe me, I have no clue how to tell someone to do something they hate. It's also not some book that says you've just got to have grit and work your way through the difficult times. Please, grit is the most overrated concept I've ever heard. Hard-working people are consistently doing it because they're doing something that they love. And so the trick in life is to find what that is and to make it a career. Now, at this point, probably a lot of people are fairly skeptical. There's lots of you that like lots of things, and you think, okay, well, that's not reasonable as a career. But I disagree. I think it's increasingly untrue. If you look around the world in which we live, it's more and more the case as time goes on that people get to combine a passion and turn it into a career. Let's call this Tamny's Law for fun and because I like to elevate myself. Tamny's Law says that as prosperity increases, laziness rapidly decreases as the range of work options increase so that every individual can do the work that most accentuates his or her individual talents. It's the job of everyone in this room and everyone watching to figure out what it is that uniquely elevates you. Now, what I want to stress about this is that what I'm describing is not easy. It's a cliche, but nothing worthwhile in life is easy. Happiness is hard. It is hard to find that which makes you consistently thrilled to get up every day, but it's certainly a worthwhile endeavor. To get to this point, to find the work that elevates you, you're going to have probably a lot of failure. Some of you are going to have a number of failures. I certainly did. I always wanted to be a writer, but I had to fail a lot of times along the way to get to that point. And so I'm not saying it's going to happen right away, but happiness is worth it for you to constantly be thinking about what it is that it would pain you not to do and figure out a way to make a career out of it. In my case, again, I wanted to be a writer about economic policy. I used to look at Steve Forbes years ago, long before he knew me, and think, I want to be able to do the kinds of things he does and talk about the economy. But it took me a long time to get the courage up to actually try. And of course, once I did, it's not as though I just suddenly became a writer and could support myself. I worked all sorts of jobs, fundraising, sales, everything I could do to pay the bills so that I could have time to read and write at night and on weekends in order to pursue this other career. So I'm not saying you can just become what you want. It's entirely possible you're going to have to work other jobs to pay the bills so that you can pursue that which elevates you. And along the way, you're going to be ridiculed. I can't tell you how many times friends of mine or even family members, people would ask me what I do, and I'd say, well, I'm a fundraiser for an institution in Washington. And they'd say, oh, no, 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 actually what he does is right. Implicit there is they weren't impressed with what I was doing. And it's embarrassing and you feel bad about yourself, but that's worth it too. Embrace all the insults in your pursuit of what you love, because in doing so, it's going to give you more fuel to prove everyone wrong and figure out what it is that elevates you and make a career of it. You've quite literally got to fall in love with something and make it happen. It's not going to be overnight, but it's worth it. Now, along these lines, to show you where the book is going, I will be up front. In many ways, I am setting myself up for ridicule, not just in this room, but for people who pick up the book, because the first chapter of my book, after the introduction, argues that college football players should major in college football. Now, people are hearing that, and they're probably thinking that's nuts. But I think it's nuts that if you are good enough to rate a scenario whereby a school will spend easily $1 million in some instances to pay you to go somewhere, why would you not focus all of your energies on developing the skills that got you to that point in the first place? What a strange thing that you wouldn't focus everything on football. But people say, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Football is just a game. Yes, it is, but it's a very cerebral game. It's one that unless you're willing to put all of your energy into it, you're not going to learn it in such a way that you can be very good at it. And to help you understand this better, I want to begin with a quote from Bill Walsh, the Hall of Fame NFL coach and also Rich Karlgaard's personal hero. As Walsh put it not long before he died, I know I have to start with football. I know I have to start with smart players. It might not have been so important in past eras, but today we're asking players to do so much and to know so many schemes. Without basic intelligence, they simply can't play. End quote. Let's then bring in a quote from Mike Holmgren, who is a Walsh disciple and is also headed for the NFL Hall of Fame. Here's what he said about the quarterback position. Quote, say you want to learn Chinese. You go to a class and learn it over a period of years and you practice speaking it. And pretty soon, after a few years, you can speak Chinese fairly well. Imagine trying to learn something as difficult, an entire system of plays, and taking the knowledge and making the decisions on what to call and where to throw, all within split seconds, and doing it with the people running at you trying to knock your ass off. Let's then go to Peter King, the dean of pro football writers. He's at Sports Illustrated in 1993. He wrote a book called Inside the Helmet, in which he explained the game through different positions. Boomer Esiason, the former Bengals quarterback, star quarterback, was the person he featured at quarterback. And he asked Esiason to explain what it's like to walk up to the line of scrimmage as a professional football quarterback. And Esiason was talking about a game and a play against the Redskins. In the early 90s, the Redskins were the top NFL team. And I'll just read you a few passages. As he put it, quote, the Redskins like to shift. And from the 45, they go right into the 46. Look, the old Bear defense. And the 45-second clock is ticking down. And I don't have much time to get the play off. And we're inside the red zone, 2nd and 7. I'm thinking all of a sudden, this is their blitz down. They're coming. So I've got to think of my blitz audible formation. I'm in strong backs. They're running 8 men up to the line of scrimmage. They're coming. He goes on to say, I go in a hurry, 282 Zulu, 282 Zulu, check 95, green, green, green. Everybody got it. Football on the professional level is artistry born of freakish athletic ability combined with superhuman intelligence about a craft that would reduce most anyone to blubbering idiots if they tried to do it. You not only have to be amazing up here, but you have to do it while people are looking to knock you over and hurt you. As Esiason went on to put it, you have to know every play, every audible, every code, word. Every single nuance of the game plan, because 60,000 people will be screaming with 3 or 4 more million watching on TV, with every eye on you, and coaches, officials, players all waiting for you, and you hardly being able to hear anything, and the clock ticking down second by second. I have to go to every player in the exact right formation with all these things going on around me. It took me 2.5 years to feel totally comfortable in this stuff. Esiason's point is that when you walk up to the line, you are making at least 60 reads in a half second. Most of you have heard of Rob Gronkowski, the Patriots tight end, kind of a meathead, sort of a party boy. Everyone assumes he's stupid. In fact, in the game of football, he's a mastermind. No less than Bill Belichick describes the position of tight end as the second most difficult position in all of football. The Patriots are able to run their offense solely because Gronkowski can do things, understands football up here in a way that few people do. There are lots of people who have his size and have his speed, but very few have his mind. What makes him great is what's up here. If the NFL were about just speed and talent, then you'd see agents waiting around at the Olympics every 4 years signing up sprinters. Notice how few sprinters make the NFL, because most of what happens, most of what makes you successful is in your head. And so you look at someone like Tom Brady, doesn't have a great arm, not very fast, but as Charlie Weiss once put it, I don't know if I've ever met anyone who reads coverages as quickly as incorrectly. You could count in one hand the times he saw something incorrectly. When he would throw to Randy Moss, lots of people had Randy Moss's talent. Randy Moss was viewed as the most intelligent player in the NFL. And so when you think about someone like Michael Vick or Mark Sanchez or Tony Romo, 3 players that got a lot of grief during their career, the fact that they were even on the field tells you something about them. These are people with a level of intelligence at this that should be looked at in the same way that we look at a great investment banker or a great scientist. What they're doing is incredibly difficult. Despite this, we say to players who rate a college football scholarship, have a fallback plan. Major in business, major in engineering, major in English. You've got to have something if you don't make it all the way to the NFL. Well, I again reject that. I say that if you rate a college football scholarship, you should major in college football. I wish there were a major like that. I wish people would acknowledge what they do with others, because let's remember, we don't knock someone for majoring in business, even though a smaller percentage of business majors, arguably than college football players, will ever work for Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. We don't make fun of English and journalism majors for majoring in that, even though a tiny percentage will ever even see the inside of the New York Times or publish a book that anyone reads. We don't make fun of engineering majors for focusing on that, even though most will never work for Bechtel or Qualcomm or ExxonMobil. But if you're that good to rate a scenario whereby someone's going to pay enormous sums of money to have you at the school, we say, oh, don't concentrate on football. Focus on all these other things that you should be doing. Well, so I ask the question once again, what's going to help you more? If you make the league, okay, it's obvious you're going to earn much more money than the average college graduate. That's a given. But even if you don't, what's more valuable, the time you spent playing under Nick Saban on the end of the bench or getting an A in English class? If you're playing for Stanford and you have no chance of making the NFL, but you focus on film study and get an interception in a game against Cal, is that going to employ you more easily than a good grade in a business class? Because remember who is supporting these teams. It's some of the most successful people, some of the school's most successful alums. Yet we tell the people who major and who focus on football that they're wasting their time. I find that odd just from a getting a job standpoint, but I think it's also very much a dated concept. It's dated because if you love football, you can increasingly make that your life's pursuit, even if you don't make the NFL, which describes the vast majority of people who ever play college football. Think about it. When Bill Belichick became an NFL assistant back in the 1970s out of Ohio Wesleyan, that was an unpaid position. Most NFL assistants, not to mention NFL players, had to have a side gig. It didn't pay very well. Well, fast forward today, that we live in a different world. Nowadays, the budget for assistant coaches at Boise State University, hardly a major university in terms of football, is $2.1 million a year. Notable here is that NFL assistants, $2.1 million is nothing. Lots of NFL assistants earn in that range nowadays. If you look at the Southeastern Conference, the best conference for college football in the US today, the average assistant salary in the SEC is $400,000. The defensive coordinator at LSU last year at the end of the season signed a 4-year contract worth $10 million. Again, think about this: when Bill Belichick got into NFL assistant coaching, there was no pay at all. Alabama's strength coach earns $500,000 a year. He used to be the highest paid, but now it's Iowa's strength coach. He earns $600,000. That number is consistently being bid up. If college football is not enough for you, let's look at high school. In the Dallas suburbs alone, there are 3 different high school stadiums that cost over $50 million. Do you want to guess what those high school coaches are being paid? Let's look at Houston, the Houston Metroplex. There are 14 high school football coaches in Houston who earn over $100,000 a year. In the state of Georgia alone, there are 16 high school football coaches that earn over $100,000 a year. The numbers keep going up in a prosperous world in which people have more and more resources, more and more interest in being entertained. The ways in which you can make money in football continue to explode. And so we don't mock someone for focusing all their energies on business or engineering. Nothing wrong with that. But why would we question someone who says, I love football uncontrollably and I want to make that a life? Thank goodness we live in a world where you can increasingly make your life something about sports. Bob Doherty has a son who is a talented basketball player. As Bob pointed out to me today, he pays a coach who earns in the 6 figures teaching kids how to better their game right here in San Diego alone. This is the future. Now, looking at this in a bigger picture beyond sports, in the 1970s, there was no Department of Labor classification for the job of a chef. If you became a chef in the 1970s, you were an object of pity. As Wolfgang Puck put it, if you chose being a chef back then, you were seen as doing a last resort job. No one took you seriously. Danny Meyer went to Trinity College, graduated, got into sales in New York after college, made a lot of money, was about to go to law school. That's what people did. And his uncle said, why? You love food. Why aren't you getting into restaurants? And so he took a very low-paying job at a restaurant so that he could learn the business, and he started telling people, yeah, I'm getting into the restaurant business. People looked at him like he had one eyebrow. And they looked down. They got very uncomfortable. What are you doing? What happened to you? Well, as Wolfgang Puck puts it, nowadays people choose being a chef as just an alternative to being a lawyer or a doctor. This is the world we live in. In a world of prosperity, more and more people divide up what they do on a daily basis. They eat out at lunch, breakfast, and dinner. And as a result, becoming a chef is just a normal path in life. If you have a passion for food, you can make a career out of it, and no one looks askance at you. Can you imagine how many sommeliers, wine experts there were who made a living at it 30, 40 years ago? That's increasingly a career today. Danny Meyer quite literally pays people at his restaurants to focus solely on designing coffee drinks for the guests. It's a beautiful world we live in, and again, it gets better and better all the time. If you look at orchestras, in 1900, if you were born loving playing the violin, great, and you might even get to play for the public. But that was hardly a full-time job. But the robber baron era created a scenario whereby more and more money was being directed at orchestras. Nowadays, if you love playing the oboe or the violin, you can make a lifelong career out of it. Your salary will be in the 6 figures. You will travel the world. You have 10 weeks of vacation. This is what we get in the world we're living in, so different from the past. And when you think about all this, it's happening in sports right now. If you leave Clemson, and this describes most major colleges, to try to go to the NFL early or try to do something else, and you don't make it, Clemson's so desperate to get you that it is made it clear that if it doesn't work out, you're free to come back whenever you want and complete your degree. That's going to be increasingly the case for all college majors as a way of luring people. We want you to thrive in so many ways, and so we'll give you the option to go out and try something and then come back and do it. The main thing is that as prosperity explodes, the range of ways to express your talents grows all the time. Now, many people hear about this and they ask about robots. Well, aren't robots going to put us out of work? Aren't they going to destroy all these jobs in such a way that the opportunity is actually going to be slim in the future? In fact, robots will be the greatest job creators ever, precisely because they're going to be the greatest job destroyers ever. You want robots to erase all the bad stuff, and that's what they do. They erase all the work that is backbreaking and mind-numbing and repetitive, and in doing so, they free us up to specialize, to pursue that which makes us great. Would any of us shun Wi-Fi or a computer or a smartphone? Obviously not. All three make us more efficient, enhance our productivity. And think about what automation will do for us. They're going to erase all the work that slows us down, that's repetitive, that we hate. And in doing so, they're going to make businesses much more productive. What this means, particularly for the young people, get ready for this. Get ready for Wednesdays to be Thursdays, because Fridays are going to be a day off in the world we're heading toward. The 5-day work week is going to be a historical relic, and it's happening fast. The result of this, what this means, is that with a 4-day work week, more and more people are going to be looking for ways to be entertained. And in a world of people with lots of money, productive people desperate for entertainment, the range of ways in which you can earn a living is going to explode. As it stands right now, you can make a lucrative living off of your shopping habits. It's called an influencer. Who on earth ever heard of influencer, but that's the world we live in today. So many people with so much money that you can literally make a job out of photographing where you're shopping and what you're buying. When you think of it in terms of sports, think about a future in which people have more than 3 days a week to pursue leisure activities, what that's going to mean for those of us who want to entertain those people through sports, through acting, through plays. The way in which we'll earn a living in the future, thanks to robots erasing all the bad work, is going to lead to a productivity explosion that's going to free more and more people up to pursue a specialty that's going to elevate them. Simply put, with wealth exploding, so will the demand for entertainment and expertise increase. This is going to be brilliant for everyone, simply because we're not going to be limited to the old forms of work, which had, in most instances, had nothing to do with what elevates our unique skills. Now, this book doesn't get too much into policy, but I simply make the point in it that if you want this world to happen more quickly, you want as limited of a government from a spending perspective as possible. I say this as someone who has no time for either political party. Because the more that we get to keep, the more that we get to invest, the more that we get to express our needs in the marketplace. Isn't it odd that we live in a world today in which people who work 30 hours a week as a dog walker earn in the 6 figures, but that's what we get. With people having more and more money, they can express needs that they never had before, not to mention that people can create different services for people that people never imagined that they needed or wanted. And so you want government spending as little as possible, just so that there's as much venture buying going into the marketplace as possible, but also as much investment as possible. Thinking about free trade, it's very simple. With free trade, all that means is that you are able to specialize. That's all it is. And when you can specialize, when you can divide up work with the rest of the world, that enables you to do narrower and narrower things and focus on what makes you an expert. And when you're able to be an expert, you're able to earn a lot more money and be a lot more productive. And so a free market does help this, simply because in a prosperous society, we get to, again, there's a lot more investment chasing different advances, and with that investment, so does opportunity grow. Simply put, you don't hate your job and you don't hate Sundays and Mondays. What you hate is a lack of capital. Because when investment is abundant, there are more and more ways of working that didn't exist in the past. And with that, you have the chance of combining what you're good at and making it into a profession. Now, in August of 2015, 12,000 screaming fans packed into Madison Square Garden. Now, is this for a basketball game or a hockey game or a boxing match? In fact, it was for the League of Legends Championship game between Counterlogic Gaming and Team Solo Mid. What on earth is this? Oh, well, in fact, we live in a world today in which if you love video games, that can now be a profession. Video gaming in this advanced world of ours is now a lifelong pursuit if that's what you're into. Video gamers, the best, earn in the millions of dollars a year for pursuing something that long ago people said that's what kids do who are not focused on the right things. So big is this. I mean, we're talking a sport, watching people play video games, that more people do this than go to MLB.com and NBA.com. This is exploding right before our eyes. People watching people play video games. Now think about what that means more broadly as we go to the 4-day work week. There are going to be leagues and concepts like this exploding all around us as, again, people get to specialize in what they're good at. To show you how lucrative this has become, there is now a new job classification. In the future, you people, especially you young people, will know people who are video game coaches. Video game coaches now earn $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year for coaching people how to play video games. If one of us, the older people in this room, we remember Atari in the 1970s, if you had said to someone that I'm going to be a professional video gamer, they would have had you committed. Well, now it's reality. Robert Morris now offers scholarships to video game players because it has a video game team. University of Washington is talking about doing the same thing. It's kind of separate, but Emerson University in Boston now has a degree in comedy that you can get. The range of work is exploding before our eyes. And again, there are dog walkers who earn in the 6 figures. There are diet consultants, but they consult people on creating diets for the family pet. There are, again, video game coaches, and there are caddies who are so rich that they actually have their own golf caddies, that they have their own charitable foundations. And then I will add, there are car wash attendants in North Korea. Now, I bring North Korea up because it's a reminder of the basic thesis of this book. As an economy grows, the range of work grows with it. No one in this room wants to be a car wash attendant, but there's been a slight liberalization in North Korea. And with that, there's now car washes, and there's a need for people to work at those car washes. Think about what that means in a developed world like ours. The more that the economy grows, the more job classifications there are. And with that, the greater odds that everyone here gets to wake up on Monday and think, I can't wait to get to work. While we will have the option of working 3 and 4 days in the not too distant future, many of you will choose to work 6 and 7 just because you'll love so much that you do. And that's the whole point about this. The end of work is not the end of work. It's just the end of work of doing things that we can't stand, that we do just because we have to, because we need to earn a living. And so that's the main point of my book, is that it's incumbent upon all of you to find what makes you happy, to go out and fall in love. Because if you do that, you will never work again. And the beauty of it is you can do it in the world we live in today. Thank you very much.